The senator from Florida.
Mr. President, is the Senate in the quorum call?
Yes, it is.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I come to the floor today to voice my support for the FDA Reauthorization Act, and within this legislation is a very important measure that will support the development of innovative and promising cancer drugs, the Race for Children Act, which was a law that I introduced with Senator Michael Bennet of the state of Colorado. Race for Children is sorely needed, as it would close a loophole that exists in current federal law and prompt companies, pharmaceutical companies, to examine the safety and the efficacy of powerful cancer drugs and how they work on children. And this, in turn, will provide doctors with the necessary information to properly treat children battling cancer. Pediatric cancer is a leading cause of death by disease among children. Startling statistic: 1 in every 285 children is diagnosed with cancer before the age of 20. And while the good news is that researchers are continuing to make significant advances to treat and cure cancer for adults, the progress to develop safe drugs for pediatric cancer sadly lags far behind. One of the problems is that under the current law, the way it is today, it directs pharmaceutical companies to study the safety and the efficacy of adult drugs on children. So if you develop a drug on diabetes or heart disease or anything of that for adults, it also requires you to do some of that on children, and because you want to make sure that it works on both populations, and you don't want to keep a drug out of market for children that could work for them. Of course, this requirement is only in place if the FDA believes that there is a pertinent need, in essence, a condition that children suffer from. So there are some conditions that are unique to adults. There are few of any pediatric populations that have that disease, and so they would maybe decide that it wasn't pertinent to require it for that drug. However, this law, this provision in the law, it specifically exempts cancer drugs. In essence, it says, if you're to a pharmaceutical company, if you're going to study the safety and the efficacy of a drug on adults, if there's a pertinent need, if there's a real population out there that suffers from the same condition in children, you got to test it on children as well, except if it's a cancer drug. And one of the reasons why that exemption is in there is because technology, medical technology, at the time that that law was put in place, it didn't allow researchers to target the genetic structure of cancer. In essence, at the time, it didn't allow them to say, we can go in and find the genetic markers of a specific cancer and test against it. And as a result, that's why it didn't have that requirement. Even now, however, we do have that capability. Today, the technology exists to pinpoint the similarities in adult and childhood cancer genomes. So the technology has now reached a point where you can treat the specific genome of a cancer, whether it's in an adult or in a child. That's where the technology has gone to. But the law has not been updated to keep up with it. And the result is there are a lot of adult advances being made, and we don't know if it works in children because they haven't been forced to test it. And so the Race for Children's Act, which is the law that Senator Bennet and I offered and is included in the FDA reauthorization, it closes that loophole. Now, let me say that getting to this point here on the floor was not easy. And so I do need to take a moment to thank the chairman, Senator Alexander of Tennessee, obviously Senator Bennet, but also the pediatric cancer community, organizations like Live Like Bella Foundation in my hometown of Miami, Lambs for Life, the Alliance for Children's Cancer, St. Jude's, St. Baldrick, the Moffitt Cancer Center, Nemours Children's Hospital, the Arnold Palmer Hospital, American Cancer Society, so many others. They all came together to the table to address this important issue in a way that would not limit future innovation for cancer treatment. It's taken over a year and a half to reach this point, and I'm grateful to all of them for their participation, because we would not be standing here today giving this speech without it. Now, suffice it to say that, tragically, many of my colleagues in Congress, here in the Senate, but also across the country, have been affected by childhood cancer. Whether you're fighting cancer yourself, or it's your child, your sister, your brother, your cousin, your friend, I want to make one thing clear: you're not alone in your struggle. I would venture to say that I do not know anyone who has not been impacted by pediatric cancer. I have it in my own family, and some have confronted it in theirs, and loved ones, and children that went to school with your kids. In fact, Live Like Bella Foundation was founded on a young girl by the name of Bella from Miami. She was a classmate of my nephew in grade school, and she lost her battle with cancer. Her father has been a tireless advocate on this cause, and he moved heaven and earth to try to reach a point where they could find a cure for her. That did not come in time, and he's now made it the mission of his life to honor her life by continuing this work. So we've all been impacted in some way. As I said, unfortunately, across this country, this disease is a reality, and I want to share some stories of a few of the children who have been impacted by cancer and who have impacted our office and led us to make this a priority over the last year and a half. The first is the story of a young boy named Jeremy. He was 5 years old. He's only 5 years old, I should say, and he's been in treatment for 4 of those 5 years. He had more than 150 surgeries so far. 5 years old, 150 surgeries, and ultimately had to have his eyes removed because of cancer. It's left him completely blind, obviously. Then there's Tatum, who was diagnosed with a rapidly developing brain tumor just before she was supposed to start kindergarten. Her parents were told by the doctors that they should take her home and they should enjoy the little time they had with Tatum because they had no options to treat her. There's Princeton, who was diagnosed with cancer when he was 5 years old. He's now 7, and in those 2 years, he's undergone 6 chemo cycles, a bone marrow transplant, 9 surgeries, 12 rounds of radiation, and 6 cycles of immunotherapy. Because of this intense and this time-consuming treatment schedule, Princeton built friendships with others who were also in the hospital for treatment. Sadly, he has lost many of these friends. Princeton's best friend was Trevor. Trevor passed away right before Princeton's birthday party, and he came to my office asking the Senate to do more for kids like them. 7-year-old Princeton, here's what he told us. This is a quote. "I don't want my friends to die, and I don't want me to die." There's the story of Derek. He was a healthy, happy boy, a baby, until he developed an aggressive form of cancer, and it produced tumors all over his body. His body was literally taken over by tumors. At only 5 months of age, baby Derek lost his battle against cancer. These are real stories. They're real heartbreaking stories. The stories of our neighbors, friends, and family, and what they have endured. With the developments in medicine today, there's no reason these children shouldn't have a second chance. Yet the treatment options for children with cancer is much more limited than it is for adults. And some of the reasons why are the issues that we're trying to address with this law here today. Recent advancements in cancer treatment enable oncology drugs to specifically target the genetic structure of the cancer. And that makes it possible to transition certain adult cancer drugs for pediatric use. However, the basic information you need to do that about dosing and safety need to be determined in order to guide the doctors responsible for treating these children. And these treatments, these advances, they're providing newfound hope for cancer patients, but mostly only for adult cancer patients. Fortunately, we have a chance and an opportunity to change this, and that was and is the goal of the Race for Children Act. The House recently passed the Race for Children Act as part of the FDA user fees, the reauthorization bill that's before us here today. And it's now our turn to do so and to send this important and this potentially life-saving legislation to the President for his signature. In a place where we've had some heated debates over the last 7 years, since I've been here 6.5, and more to come, sometimes it feels like perhaps our service here doesn't make much of an impact. But from time to time, we have these unique opportunities to vote on laws and legislation that slightly alter the arc of history and potentially help people. Standing here today, I can't tell you if there'll be 1,000 children, 100,000 children, or 5 children who will benefit from a cancer treatment because of this new requirement in which these adult drugs will have to be tested in children. We don't know. Standing here today, believing that we all walk on earth and our days are numbered through the glory and grace of God, frankly, we don't know if one of our own children, God forbid, or someone we deeply love, or one of their classmates will be impacted by pediatric cancer. But we know that 1 in about 300 children will be. And so the chances are that at some point we will once again have someone we care about deeply impacted. And we hope that when that moment comes, if it does, that there will be options for their parents and their doctors, that they will have the opportunity to use for them treatments that perhaps would not have been available had this requirement not been in the law. And that's why I hope and I urge my Senate colleagues here to join me in supporting this initiative. In fact, sometimes we give these speeches with a sense of mystery. If this passes, if it doesn't pass, there's no reason why this isn't going to pass. We all expect the FDA reauthorization bill to pass. And I imagine when people vote on this tomorrow, they'll read the title of the bill, FDA fee reauthorization. It just sounds like us taking care of the normal course of business, important in its own right, by the way. But this is just some bureaucratic exercise to reauthorize an expiring law. Embedded in that law is a very important law, one that I hope will lead to real life-changing innovation in a way that will impact lives and change and save the lives of children here in our country, but ultimately in other parts of the world as well. And that's why I felt it was important to come here to the Senate floor and obviously urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this initiative, but also urge you to be proud of it. We're about to go home here, whether it's tomorrow or next week, and answer to our constituents for all the things we didn't do. And there are some significant issues we have not confronted and solved for the country. But this is a significant issue. There isn't going to be a lot of articles written about it. There isn't going to be blaring headlines on the websites about it, mailers and campaign commercials. It doesn't mean it isn't important. We live in a society where oftentimes good news doesn't draw ratings, and good news doesn't drive eyeballs and clicks to a website. It doesn't make it unimportant. It doesn't make it insignificant. This is significant. This is an opportunity. This is evidence that more often than perhaps people realize, fellow Americans of different points of view, representing diverse states and communities, who approach the political process with very different ideologies and aims, come together to make a difference. And I'm pleased that while there are many things we have not done, we will leave here tomorrow or next week knowing that at least we did one thing that will matter. And it's an important thing, because these children that we're trying to help, they do not have the time to continue waiting for us to step up and take action. So I thank you, Mr. President. And with that, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.